One concept that can be really confusing with plate tectonics is the concept of how hotspots work. Not so much what they are, but more how to determine what direction the plate is traveling relative to the age of the volcanic mountains that are generated or the volcanic islands that are generated. So we're going to use an island example. So we have our piece of oceanic crust, and that crust is traveling from left to right across the page here because our plates do move. And then we have this mantle plume, which is just an area of really intense heat in the mantle that's going to generate our hotspot. And so the mantle plume, nice and hot, our magma is going to breach the surface and turn into lava. And then eventually, if it grows large enough, it will go above sea level and it'll generate our lovely little island here. And I'll call that island number 1. Now, the mantle plume is going to remain at this location, but this plate is going to move that island away off of the top of that plume. And so what we need to visualize is something like this, where our plate has moved. Go. But our mantle plume has stayed in that original location. So here we go. And here's MP for mantle plume. And so my volcano has went ahead and got carried off with it. That's number 1. Let me put the sea level on there to make that easier for us to see what's going on. Okay, so I've got my island that has been carried away. It's no longer building, and it'll actually erode away below sea level at some point just due to a natural erosion. But now I've got a new little volcano developing here, and it will eventually breach the surface. And now I've got my island number 2. Okay, so as that plate again continues to move from left to right, it's going to repeat that all over again. And so you would get a third version of this. Here's my ocean, water, and I would have my mantle plume still in the same location, hasn't moved. And I would have my volcano number 1, which probably would have gotten smaller by this point, my volcano number 2, and then I would start my third one, which would eventually be volcano number 3. And so this is how we get a chain of islands. We call it a hotspot at that mantle plume. And what we notice is that if we go oldest here, so here's my oldest, and then of course my youngest is right over that mantle plume, youngest, that the plate is actually traveling in the direction of the oldest island there. Or if this was happening on land, something like a Yellowstone in Wyoming, then these would be mountains that are actually on a continent. In our case, they are just volcanic islands. But the direction of plate travel is always toward the oldest. So that can be really confusing when you're looking at the map to know, well, which way is the plate going? So another little trick to do with that, I'm going to get a piece of paper here, is to generate like a little 3-dimensional model. So this would be your plate, and then this could be your mantle plume. You can stick that under there and maybe even draw your little islands on top, like, and this one's the oldest and this one's the youngest, or however they're laid out there. And then take your mantle plume, put it under the oldest one. Let's say the oldest one is here toward the front of my page. And what you would do is you would move that paper to get to the youngest island there. And that will tell you, oh, my paper moved in this direction. So you can just really visualize that in 3 dimensions. So hopefully that helps.